I think we just have one.
Call the Basehor Planning Commission to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Jim.
Here.
Janice.
Here.
Tom.
Here.
Stacy.
Here.
Blake.
Here.
Cecil. Turn your mic on.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Everyone's present. Item 3, approval of minutes of the preceding meeting. Do we have any changes, comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the January 9th, 2024 minutes of the Basehor Planning Commission meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor? Cecil?
Yes.
Yes. Stacy?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Do we have any declarations from any of the members of the commission regarding any of the items on tonight's agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on. Planning Director's report.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. We have several items on the agenda this evening. We have a request for a rezoning. We have a request for a 2-lot subdivision plat, some updates to our zoning regulations, and then finally amendments to adoption really of the Basehor Planning Commission bylaws. As you all know, we are working on getting together an opportunity to go see some different types of development throughout the community, and I appreciate your patience as we work through that. We're really looking forward to that. We will make sure that we do not have more than 2 of you together at any given time, so that we don't have any unintentional coma or core violations, just so you know. So again, I really appreciate your efforts in working through that with me. And then other than that, we just have business as usual this evening.
Item 5, under new business. PRZ-001-23. Consider rezoning of Wolf Creek Meadows, a 4.10 acre lot on Parallel Road west of 142nd Street from R0 to I1. PID 1810100000200. A public hearing is required.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is case number PRZ-001-23. This is going to be a unique case. Consolidated Water District 1 is requesting a number of items this evening, and they're all obviously lumped together. So the first item before you is a request to rezone a tract of land. Diana, would you pull up the map for me? The water district is proposing to purchase approximately 1/3 of an acre of this tract of land. This rezoning request is for that 1/3 of an acre only. It does not extend past the remaining tract. So just there in the northwest portion of the property. This request is so they can install a water meter and then to build a structure around it to protect their investment. The remainder of this property will remain as the RO zoning district. So just so we're clear on that. If you recall on the plat, there's 2 lots there. So it's just proposed lot number 1 is what we're talking about with this rezoning. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear there. As I said, the water district is looking to install some infrastructure that will improve their ability to service the city of Basehor. The use that they're requesting is an allowed use under the RO zoning district. However, there are a couple of complicating factors here. one, the water district wished to purchase, the least amount of land necessary for their operations. The property owners wanted to retain the land because it's my understanding that it is used for agricultural purposes of some sort. This property is heavily constricted with a floodplain and floodway. The difference between a floodway is, of course, active water. Floodplain is where the water spills over. And then further, there are also pretty restrictive easements on this property, making the development of the rest of this property very unlikely. So that's where the third of an acre came to. In order to divide property in the RO zoning district, you have to have a minimum of 1 acre. So again, that's where we get to that third of an acre, just so there's some background there on why we're requesting that. The reason for the request to the I-1 zoning district is because that's where a water meter is, again, an allowed use. So it's an allowed use in the RO zoning district and in the I-1 zoning district. As you can see from the current zoning configuration we have here, there is substantial commercial and industrial zoning in this area already. So it made sense that we would seek that rezoning. This wasn't a spot zoning, we weren't talking about putting a little piece of I-1 out in the middle of nowhere. It conforms again to the surrounding uses. So that gives you a little bit of background. As you know, when we go through a request for rezoning, there are certain items that have to be addressed, those factors to be considered for rezoning. The first thing we take a look at is the character of the immediate area. Again, we know that area is pretty well developed. There is a small industrial area. There's the landscape business just to the west of this particular property. There is some rural residential out there. There's definitely some larger lots with some homes on it. But across the street to the north is, that small industrial park where there's industrial uses taking place over there. Again, that corresponds to the zoning and the uses of the nearby property. The zoning very much mirrors the uses that the properties are being used as. The suitability of the property for the uses to which it's been restricted. Again, it's currently zoned as RO, which would allow for large lot residential and agricultural uses. Again, based upon the floodway, which you can see. Oh, Diana, if you go back up one more page for me. Thanks. Down just a little bit. That future land use map there, you can see this area is called for it to be commercial, but that blue, that's all the floodway and the floodway that we're talking about. So it greatly encumbers this property's ability to be developed. It does make it suitable for agricultural uses though. Extent to which removal of the present zoning will detrimentally affect nearby properties. The rezoning request is unlikely to negatively impact nearby properties. The surrounding area is currently heavily used for commercial and industrial purposes, and the proposed use on this subject parcel will not create additional traffic. Again, their request is just to install a water meter. Of course, it will need serviced and someone will go out there regularly to make sure everything is working, but it won't, this is not the public coming out. Length of time the property has remained vacant and zoned. It's never been developed. It's been used for agricultural purposes. Relative gain to the public health, safety, and welfare, as compared to the destruction of the value of the petitioner's property, as compared to the hardship imposed upon the individual landowners. Again, the construction of this facility will mean additional water being brought into the city of Basehor, which is an improvement to the residents of the city of Basehor. We do not anticipate this having negative impacts on the property owners surrounding. This rezoning, again, just very much mirrors what's across the street already. But the anticipated use is significantly less intense. It is important to keep in mind, though, that once a rezoning takes place, anything that is allowed in that zoning district is now, open, this property would now be subject to those uses. One of the things that makes, again, this property pretty unique and staff is one of the reasons staff is supportive of this is because that parcel size is so small, the amount of true industrial uses that you could construct here is incredibly limited. We're not talking about a dog food plant going in here. It's just far too small for anything of that nature. So again, the impact to the area is quite minimal. Recommendation of professional staff. Your staff recommends approval of the request in conformance to the requested rezoning to the adopted comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan shows this as commercial. This is a higher use than that, of course, but in general, we would say that it is in conformance. It's not exactly in conformance, but it's generally in conformance. And again, it's in conformance to what's already there across the street. So with that, staff recommends approval of the rezoning request. Mr. Fulkerson is here and will answer any questions that you may have. This is a public hearing, so a public hearing is required. And I'll answer any questions that you may have.
You said this is going to increase the ability to bring in more water.
That's my understanding, and certainly if Mr. Fulkerson wants to answer more specific questions, I don't know very much about water
And
infrastructure.
is this due to the city center, the town center project?
Good evening, Commissioners. Mike Fulkerson with Consolidated Water, 15520 Crestwood Drive. So we completed a study just a few years ago, and our biggest need going forward is to ensure that we can bring in the quantity of water we need to make sure that everybody has water in the city of Basehor. This is not an immediate need. We're not running out of water or anything like that. This is planning well into the future, 10 to 20 years. But we tend to get ahead of things because we have a very aggressive capital improvement program. This has nothing to do with Basehor Town Center or any current development whatsoever. So, but what this will do, if I may, publicly acknowledge Crystal and Diana for their help and expertise. They have been fantastic through this whole process because we've been working on this on our side for months. So, but what this will do, and she mentioned a water meter. This is a 10-inch water meter. It's the largest meter that we have around. And so this will give us a fourth connection where we buy all of our water from the Board of Public Utilities. So we'll go from 2,200 gallons a minute capacity to be able to come in. We'll go up to about 4,500 to 5,000 gallons per minute to compete. So this will handle any growth now and well into the future.
Mr. Fulkerson,
Yes,
if I
ma'am.
may ask, I see and hear comments a lot from residents about low water pressure. Will this help to increase the water pressure for the residents?
Well, it will not necessarily, but we are a gravity system in which all of the water we purchase from BPU goes up into our water towers and then they gravity flow out. And it depends on where you're at. Where you're located in the city depends on what your pressure is, because the higher your elevation that you live on, compared to a water tower, the lower your pressure. The farther down into the ground, if you will, on a hill or what have you, that will increase your water pressure.
Okay.
So if you're up on a hill, it is what it is.
Mine, I've never had any problem, but I have heard rumor that there are areas that have low water pressure, but
Yes, we're obligated by the state of Kansas to supply a minimum of 20 pounds per square inch, if you will. And so our lowest is around 50 pounds per square inch. So it's short of raising the water towers up to increase the pressure, that's the best we can do.
Okay, thank you.
But
Anyone else?
The lot in question, does the water district own that lot now?
we do not. We're currently under contract pending approvals.
Any questions, Cecil?
No, not right now.
So entertain a motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
I second.
All in favor? Cecil?
Yes.
Yes. Stacy?
Yes.
Yes.
Janice?
yes.
Jim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Public hearing is now open. Do we have anyone that would like to speak to this item? Nobody online? Okay. Yes, please state your name and address.
It's Sue Krause and I live at 142nd.
Speak into the mic, please.
Sure. Hi, I'm Sue Krause and I live at 142nd Parallel, which is east of the property we're talking about. And Mike has contacted me because I had questions and expressed some and concern, and he went over everything in detail with me. So I feel like I have a much clearer understanding of what's going on and the fact that it will not impact my property negatively. So that was reassuring to hear that. And he and I have spoken about the water line that will have to cross my property that may exceed the right of way, I believe it is, but that can be worked out. We have, he's made that clear that we won't have issues there and we can just move forward. But as far as what I've learned about the building and everything, I can't imagine that it would be anything but a positive addition to that area. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor? Blake?
Hi.
Stacy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Cecil?
Yes.
Public hearing is now closed. Do you have any additional questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one question. And this is hypothetical. What are, and I'm just asking the question, what are some possible ramifications of precedents that doing this rezoning can have?
That's a good question. You know, we talk a lot about precedents, but when you kind of set some, but you also don't, because every rezoning case is so unique, you know, of where it's located and what's around it. And so
I'll entertain a motion on the item.
Mr. Chairman, Blake Waters, I recommend approval of request to PRZ 00123 to rezone the subject from RO suburban residential to I1 light industrial for the following reasons based upon the factors to be considered.
Do I have a second?
Oh, second.
All in favor? Cecil?
Yes, sir.
Jim?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Dennis?
yes.
Yeah.
Blake?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 7-0. Next item, number 6. PPP 003-23 and PFP 004-23. Consider preliminary and final plat of Wolf Creek Meadows on Parallel Road.
Thank you, Chairman. And you all might wonder why I recite the name of the applications after you've just done that. It's because there's a typo here. This is actually case number PFP 003-23. That's my fault. And PPP 003-23. So this is a preliminary and a final plat application for a 2-lot subdivision to be known as Wolf Creek Meadows, located near 142nd and Parallel Road. The property is proposed to be divided into 2 lots. The first would be a 1/3 of an acre that corresponds to the rezoning, of course, that we just heard. And the second is the remaining 3.5 acres, which will remain as it is in use today. Earlier this evening, the Board of Zoning Appeals heard a variance request that will apply to this lot, to lot 1 of Wolf Creek Meadows if this plat is approved by the Planning Commission. That is to reduce the setback from 80 feet in the front to 50 feet and from 25 feet in the rear to 10 feet. That's based upon the constraints to this lot, as we've previously discussed, the floodplain, the floodway, and also the existing easements. Other than that, the layout of the plat meets the zoning regulations. It has the appropriate amount of frontage, depth, land to correspond to the zoning regulations. Lot 1 meets the I1 zoning district regulations, and lot 2 meets the RO zoning district regulations. It is in conformance. Staff recommends approval of this. Like I said, if this is approved, that variance request that was heard this evening will apply to lot 1 only. It will not correspond to lot 2. The applicant is still here and will answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions?
If we approve this, are we also approving the actual structure, the fifth, that'll come at a different date? It will come.
Correct. That's a great question. It will not come before you. The site plan process is administrative. So it will only come before a council if they're asking for deviations to the architectural design standards. To my knowledge, they're not requesting any, so it will be an administrative approval, assuming it meets all of the regulations for the zoning district, and we suspect that it will.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Cecil, you got anything?
No, I think I'm good.
Jim, Janice?
No.
I'm good.
Okay. You care to speak to this at all? No. I'm good. Any questions for the applicant? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve case number PFP 00323 and PPP 00323, preliminary and final plat of Wolf Creek Meadows.
I'll second.
All in favor? Cecil?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Blake?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 7-0. Yeah, thank you. Item 7, PADM -001-24, update to Basehor zoning regulations, Article 3. A public hearing is required.
Thank you. This is PADM -001-24. This is an update to Article 3 of the zoning regulations, and that pertains to the makeup of the planning commission. As you all know, we have been going through the zoning regulations with a fine tooth comb for the last 13 months or so, and trying to clean up any inconsistencies that we find. One of the things that we have found is that there is a requirement that 2 planning commissioners shall reside outside of the city limits, but within 3 miles. We believe that that was enacted about 20 years ago or so, and it was with respect to a potential growth management area where the city would have the ability to exercise control over a boundary outside of the city limits. State statute says that if you are going to have an interlocal agreement with the county to extend that oversight, you must have 2 planning commissioners that reside outside of within that 3-mile boundary. We don't have an urban growth management area. We don't intend on having an urban growth management area. And so we wanted to clean it up to say may, because having this unnecessary restriction can down the road make it difficult to fill spaces, because some people who live outside of the city limits and want to spend 20 years dedicated to the Basehor Planning Commission, which is greatly appreciated, but not everybody who lives outside of the city limits necessarily wants to do that. So we wanted to give some more flexibility. And this primarily came up, and on the next item, you'll see we are working on adopting new bylaws to change our meeting times. And when we were going through and pulling all of this, that's when we came across this and said, okay, let's go ahead and fix it because we're here. So that's what this request is. It is simply to make it so that it's no longer a requirement, but it's still allowed, because we want to make sure that we can appoint good people who will represent the city planning commission well. And those people can now live either solely within the city limits or again within that 3 miles. With that, I'll answer any questions you may have. Staff recommends approval of this, obviously. And there is no applicant and does require a public hearing.
Question, Tom?
What do you think? I ask questions a lot around here? I do have a question, as a matter of fact.
Well, I already went through that.
All right, very good. Yeah, and I appreciate the comments that there are no plans, but if there ever were an instance where an interlocal agreement were enacted, would this have to be changed ahead of that?
Yes, it would have to be
Again,
changed
hypothetical.
back to shall, yes.
Thank you.
I had the same question. But that's okay. I'm glad you had a question. Janice, you have any questions?
Nope, we're good.
No. Cecil, you got any questions, comments? You're out in the county like I am.
I think they're talking about you and I, John.
Yeah, they're just trying to get rid of us, I think.
No, I don't have any
I'm
questions.
kidding. I'm kidding. Okay. I understand the reasoning. Like I said, I had the same question Tom had. If at some point, because I know there was an effort at one time, a few years ago, to create an interlocal agreement. There was a lot of misunderstanding, but that's okay. So you answered that question. I also thought, do you have any idea what other cities do as far as the possible growth outside of their areas? Do they still go by two in the county if they have an interlocal agreement, or?
So if there is an interlocal agreement, there must be two planning commissioners appointed that live within that boundary, according to state statute. I don't know of any communities in the nearby vicinity that have interlocal agreements. I know I don't know of any that exist in the Kansas City metro on the Kansas side. Obviously, I'm not very familiar with the Missouri side. They can sometimes cause a lot of disruption, and so I'm not very familiar with whether or not other cities.
Will the city continue to look for someone or one or two people outside of the city limits?
Sure. So that the appointment of the planning commission is really at the discretion of the mayor. And so that would, depending upon what the needs were of the community at the time that, it's time to appoint planning commissioners, that's something that would be evaluated at that point in time.
I guess my reason for asking that is city limits comes right to my property line.
Say that again, Joe.
The city limit comes right to my property line. I would like to think someone in my position, wherever they might be around city limits, would be able to have some say in some of the things the city might do, if you get my drift.
Yeah, and again, so this does allow for up to, so, one or two, we just,
Does it say you want to change it from have to be allowed to?
correct.
Basically.
No. And I can understand the city's growing and there's probably more interest within city than there is within counties.
Not necessarily. It's difficult to find,
Commissioners.
yeah, it's difficult
I get
to
it.
find people who want to serve. You
Right.
serve in a volunteer position, you have a big job, it's greatly appreciated, and it's hard to find people who want to commit that kind of time, and that's part of the change is, let's say in 20 years, John, when you decide to retire, and it's time to fill your position, it's not guaranteed that somebody outside of the city
Sure.
would want to fill it. And so that puts the mayor in a position of trying to, kind of force a square peg into a round hole.
You have more options.
Yeah.
I get it.
More flexibility.
Anybody have anything else? Entertain a motion to open a public hearing. Begin with.
I move we open a public hearing.
A second.
All in favor, Cecil?
Yes.
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Blake?
Yes.
I vote yes, public hearing's now open. Do we have any public comments? None heard. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
We'll close public hearing.
Second,
All in favor, Blake?
Aye.
Stacy?
Yes.
Tom?
yes.
Stacy? Or Stacy? Yeah, go the other way.
Yes.
Yes. Jim?
Yes.
Cecil?
Yes.
Oh, yes, public hearing is closed. I will entertain the motion on the item.
I make a motion that we approve PADM -001 -24 update to the Basehor zoning regulations.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, Cecil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Dennis?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Blake?
Yes.
I vote yes. Item passes 7-0.
All right. Thank you.
Item 8, excuse me. PADM -002 -24, amendment to Basehor Planning Commission bylaws.
All right, thank you. This does not require a public hearing. Mr. Heaven was unable to be here. He is, as you know, our special counsel who represents the city on land use matters and zoning matters. We were again working to move our planning commission meetings from 7 PM to 6 PM. And it kind of became obvious that we weren't sure if we had really adopted bylaws. We found some that said draft, but we're not sure. And the bylaws that had been drafted needed some tweaking. And so Pete wrote up some new bylaws that follow standard practice, provide an outline of how we should conduct business, how members should be appointed, what your roles are, you know, like the chairman and the secretary, vice chairman and such. We also are proposing to amend these bylaws, changing the establishment of election of officers from it's currently March. We're changing that to June. Your appointments happen in May, so it's kind of silly that we would appoint a chairman and a vice chair on a time when, you know, they may not choose to reapply to be appointed again. So we move those to June, so that would flow more appropriately with the appointments. And again, we propose to move these meetings from 7 PM to 6 PM. There's also the establishment of a consent agenda that we would be able to move forward with. I'm sure you're all very familiar, but just in case you're not, a consent agenda allows you to approve things with the agenda. This would only pertain to items that do not require a public hearing, like a plat that meets all of the zoning regulations. You would no longer have to open that up. You could just, it would go on the consent agenda and you would approve it with the consent agenda to save time. You can pull anything off the consent agenda that you want for any reason that you want to. So you don't have to be concerned about that. And then again, it provides, you know, a flow of how meetings should be conducted. Who's responsible for maintaining what records, and provides, you know, a policy on how to move forward. And one interesting thing, and this is something I did not know, the chair obviously gets a vote, but the chair cannot make a motion. And that was news to me. I did not know that. So a lot of very interesting and good information in here to help us conduct meetings the most efficiently way possible and to answer any questions about, you know, rules of engagement should they come up, and sometimes they come up. So obviously we recommend approval of these. This will require you all to approve them, and then they will also be approved by the city council since you are appointed by the city council and your decisions go to the city council. So.
So these put on our website, right? The city Basehor website somewhere.
No, we will once,
So if we want these, we better take them with us now.
oh, well, you can take them absolutely, but I will email them to you.
Oh,
They
sure.
will, they're currently in draft form. They'll need to be
Once we
signed.
get 'em. Yeah.
But yes, once they're signed, they'll be signed by the mayor and
Okay.
such. We will make sure that you have a copy of it. And then going forward, anytime there's a new planning commissioner, you know, they'll get a packet, and then we are going to get in the habit of doing yearly, like onboarding training, just kind of a refresher of, hey, this is what we do, this is how we do it, and the bylaws and such will be in that. So if you were to ever lose your copy of the bylaws or forget your email that you had them sent to, obviously you can get that from us at any point in time, but we'll make sure that you've got that information for you, and we'll go over them.
Um, on page 34, page 41. Commission membership shall comply with the Basehor zoning ordinance. Should there be a, like, which specifies the number?
Yeah, that's Article 3. So
It just doesn't read well to me, is what I'm saying.
where,
Am I being a little? Section 2, under Article 1. It says, the commission membership shall comply with the Basehor zoning ordinance. Should that say which
specifies, yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. Yep.
I think I've got a couple more of those that, if everybody will bear with me. Article 5, Section 4. Second paragraph from the bottom. All meetings of the commission is present shall. I don't understand.
It should say all meetings in the commission present shall be open, so that needs to go away.
Okay, thank you. Section 11 lays out the agenda, basically.
Mhm.
There is nothing there for the pledge.
We can add, so, yep. Add the pledge under call to order.
Does it say in here somewhere, like the situation we had where it was a tie vote? And then there was it was considered a denial?
Yes, so,
Is that in here? somewhere?
yeah, so a tie vote is considered a denial.
Yeah.
And also technically an absent vote is considered a vote.
If I don't show up, it's a vote against. Okay,
Yes.
that's in the bylaws, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You're talking about abstentions or just?
Yeah, so yes, that's all dealt with
Yeah,
in here, yes. Definitely recall.
that's
It's section.
Yeah, 4.
18.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, page 39, page 41.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got one more. Page 41, section 20. Could you go through the revote? That piece?
Okay. So. If, for instance, a rezoning request comes before you. or whatever it may be, but say a rezoning request comes before you. And 4 of you vote in favor of approving the rezoning request and 3 of you vote against it. And let's say the 4 who voted for it are James, Janice, Tom, and John. James, Janice, Tom, or John, maybe Stacy, Blake, and Cecil were really adamant that it should have been no. And after they've already taken the motion, one of these 4, it says, maybe we should reconsider that. They can call for it to be reconsidered. The losing side, if you will, cannot call for it to be reconsidered, but the winning side can. Does that make sense?
Yep.
I guess the question I have then is how, if the vote comes up 4-3 and the chair, whether it's me or someone else, says, oh, cool, the motion passes.
It has to happen. So the request to reconsider the motion has to happen in that meeting.
So it could happen
Yeah.
after another agenda item has already been discussed. They can go back. That's how I read it.
Yes, this motion must be made at the same meeting in which the original vote was taken, but shall not be debated until the next regular meeting of the commission or a properly noticed special meeting called for that purpose.
Okay. So then if someone, 4 of us would call for a revote in that meeting after another item, then it gets tabled until the next meeting. Is that the way I understand that?
That's not how I read it. Only if we want to debate it, it would be at the next meeting. But if we just want to revote and not debate it, it would still be at the same meeting.
No, I take this and I can ask for clarification from Pete on this, but
I think if it has a public hearing, you have to rehear it. You have to set it to the next meeting.
you have, yeah, so
Which
you,
a zoning issue would fall into that.
right, so you cannot, you're not going to open it back up if that you're, in a sense, yes, you're tabling it to the next
Yeah.
meeting.
So
You're not re-voting on it at that meeting.
Right.
It's definitely how I read this. I've never seen that happen.
No,
But
doesn't mean it can't.
it doesn't mean it can't, and that's why you have bylaws,
Yep.
right?
somebody in the world had it happen.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
He wouldn't have
absolutely.
Put it in here.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Anybody have anything else?
No, but I'm glad you read that a lot closer than I
Me
did.
too. Thank you, John.
Mr. Chairman, I have a list of things.
Go right ahead.
Crystal, thank you for this, but I do have a lot of concerns about this. And I think you may have addressed one of my concerns. Currently, the planning commission or the city of Basehor does not have bylaws for the planning commission.
We have bylaws that say draft on them.
So, okay, so my question was, how come we're not getting the red line version? It's because there's nothing adopted. Okay, thank you. My next question is, where is this language coming from? Is there a state statute that's driving a lot of this language, or is this, and with all due respect to you and to Pete, is this you two coming up with language?
So I will be fully transparent here. This is primarily Mr. Heaven who does
Appreciate it.
this.
So I'm a little bit concerned about that, and Mr. Evans, wonderful and brilliant and the expert, but it doesn't. I think there's a lot of things that are being tailored to make it a little bit more convenient on staff to get things done administratively. That's how I'm taking it.
Can you point that out?
Let me go through and I think I can point a few things out. My next general thing is, we received these on Friday and here we are on Tuesday trying to consider these. this is unless I missed a meeting, which I know I did, that has this been considered and was there input from the planning commission on some of these things? And here we are Tuesday trying to approve something with some already pointed out mistakes and some things that aren't as clear. So that concerns me. One of my big things, so I'm gonna go on to my next point. One of my big things is the consideration of moving the meeting from 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. I completely understand that it is more convenient on staff. However, I believe as public servants, we need to be extraordinarily open and available to the public. And I think moving it from 7 to 6 p.m. really reduces the ability for the general public to participate in these meetings. If there is, and there will be some significant discussions and some significant issues. And I don't like that idea of reducing an hour for someone to get here. I would love to be able to see, and if it's been shared already, I would like to see it. What other communities are doing in terms of when they hold planning commission meetings, what time, and if there's any study that says holding it at 6 p.m. Has the same amount of public commentary and participation, I'll fully accept that. So that's my big thing about it. Give me a second here, please. On section 18, we were talking a little bit about abstentions. I'm in complete disagreement that an abstention shall be considered a vote in opposition. I did a quick little Google search last night for Robert's Rules of Orders, and that is absolutely not the case. So if there's some justification on that, I sure would like to know that. But if I abstain from a vote, if I wanted to vote no, I would vote no. If I'm abstaining because it's my business, or it's a property next to me or something, why would that be considered a no vote? So I don't agree with that at all. I think an abstention is merely an abstention. On section 19, a tie vote shall be deemed a recommendation of disapproval. My comment or my question that I wrote to myself is why? Well, why would that be considered a recommendation of disapproval? So I would like that. I don't know if you can answer that, but
I can,
okay, please.
yeah, so that I can tell you is standard operating procedure. A tie vote is a negative, You have to have one to push you over. And I don't know exactly where that comes from, but I know that it's in my previous position, that was the case there also. So that is definitely what takes place. I do want to make a
I went through those quickly, so please.
Sure. The abstention is only a tie. It's only a negative if it's a tie vote. So if it's a tie vote and you have abstained from voting, then it's an abstention. If it's not, say it's a 6-0 vote, it's just a 6-0 vote with one abstain.
So that includes recusing yourself?
Abstention is recusal, yes.
It is. Okay.
So for whatever reason that it may be.
I appreciate that. I still disagree with that.
And I think it is important. So, when we ask about, does anyone have anything to declare? Let's try to kind of clear up why you would abstain from a vote, because it is your duty to vote whenever possible. But at the beginning of the meeting, when it's asked, is there anything to declare? Just because you maybe live next door to somebody, or because someone has contacted you, that's not always a reason to abstain. You should declare it. You should say, so-and-so reached out to me. This was the communication. And really, if you receive a communication from someone, you should forward it to staff so staff can provide it to everybody so that everyone has the same information. As long as you're declaring it and you feel that you can make an ethical vote, either in the affirmative or the negative, you don't have to recuse yourself. We want you to vote. We want it to be transparent because we don't want anyone to come back and say, well, I know that Tom got a letter from Susie and this is what it said. And what do you do? So that's why we ask you to declare it, so that it's upfront. We don't want anybody to abstain unless they just absolutely positively have to. And that, kind of adding that provision is giving you like, confidence isn't the right word, but there is a repercussion potentially for not voting, right? And that's that something could fail. And so we want to really encourage the planning commission members to vote.
I appreciate that, but I think it's within my, I don't want to say constitutional right, but I think I can abstain from a vote if I wanted to.
Absolutely.
Yes, and I don't think I don't think the bylaws should tell me what those repercussions are going to be. I think my fellow commissioners can, and understanding what the gravity of the vote is about should kind of dictate what those repercussions are for my actions. And so there was a question about, are there any examples that I can maybe point to on how I feel that this is pushing the planning commission to more administrative. I completely understand the consent agenda. I use that in my own agency and it's very, very effective. But I think that's an opportunity to kind of allow us to rubber stamp a lot of things. And that's an awful term and I apologize for using it. But if we're up here and we're getting the ire of the citizens, I think we need to be able to be responsible for a lot of those actions. And I also think this coming to us without any input from the planning commission or having even a planning session about it just isn't a good business practice. This would have been just a great opportunity to have Pete and some other folks to sit down and say, hey, we're thinking about this. You know, what are your thoughts versus having this in a kind of open public meeting with 4 days to consider it. So I in good conscience cannot support this. I think there's too many mistakes. I'd like for it to be reconsidered, but that'll be my vote.
Could we table this until next month's meeting?
Yeah, of course. And I did want to, the 6 o'clock, the 7 o'clock to the 6 o'clock thing.
Please.
I have not conducted any studies personally, but I have been a part of many after hours planning events, and our consultants have, and this is anecdotal information from them, but this is what they do all of the time. If you give the public an opportunity to go home, they don't come back.
Mhm.
And so it's been found, and again, in my previous position, we moved meetings from 7 to 6, and there was not a drop off in the number of people who came out. We have recently had several open houses for the downtown corridor study, which actually started at 5:30 p.m. Everybody came between 5:30 and 6:15. They were from 5:30 to 7:30, and nobody was there after 6:15. And so it seems to bear out that if something is really important to people, they will come. We also heavily encourage written input. If we receive a letter or an email, we give it to you. And that testimony has every bit as much weight as if they came and stood in front of this podium. We also obviously have the Zoom option. We have made it just people have a lot of opportunities, you know, to participate. Now, that being said, if this commission does not feel that planning commission meetings should happen at 6 p.m., you would rather they stay at 7, that's perfectly fine. It is, you know, from a staff perspective, it puts it more in line with what other communities do.
Well, and city council. That's what we're
City
doing.
council is also at 6 p.m. There is a lot of dead time. The city hall closes at 4:30. So there's a lot of dead time in between. And don't get me wrong, sometimes that's when I get the most of my work time is, you know, those 2 hours or so in between, but it does bring it into conformance. And we did weigh, you know, we talked a lot about how this would potentially impact, you know, the public's ability, and we don't think that it will. For instance, Kansas City, Missouri, I'm not trying to be Kansas City, Missouri, their planning commission meets at 2 p.m.
Johnson County meets at 10 a.m. I get that, but I'll stand by my comments.
Absolutely. But I just want you to know, we did consider it. We did talk about it heavily. And I, again, leaned on our consultants who deal with, you know, public meetings every day.
I personally agree with the 6 o'clock. I think that makes all kinds of sense. I totally agree with you. I have no clue we didn't have bylaws till I got here tonight. And that does not feel good.
Sure. And
And we ought to have input on what the bylaws say.
I may have a copy of bylaws.
Oh, okay, okay.
I can't say whether they are stamped.
Like I said, we found lots of things that said draft and it was like, well,
Well,
They're pretty simple.
but it's a perfect example of the interaction we've had tonight. Uh, You know, I might have missed it here, but I didn't see in here anywhere in my packet of information that said there weren't bylaws. I only saw moving from, you know, it says the primary changes include changing the meeting time and establishing election of officers in the month of June, and all of a sudden, we find out we don't have bylaws. And, you know, with all due respect, I'm just saying, I totally agree with Tom. I think we need to back off, table this, and let's do it right and have input from the planning commission and this. Tell me where I'm wrong. Shouldn't we have input on the
well,
bylaws?
it's one of those things you don't really think about
Right.
it, right? Until when reading this, we read through what we have listed as a draft. And that's when I said, you know,
When did that happen? Was that just like in the last
the last, 4 weeks or
4
so.
weeks ago, and now we're just hearing about it? See, yeah, that just feels bad to me.
Sure. So when I said changing from, May or from March to June or whatever, that's reading the draft. We have operated under the draft. We've operated under the draft, but
And we didn't know about that. I don't remember being told that we were operating under a draft of bylaws that weren't voted on by the planning commission.
I don't think.
Well, I
you
think
did
the
that.
assumption is
Yeah.
made that there were bylaws.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Not
And I
that-
didn't know either.
And then all of a sudden, somebody reads them and it says draft.
Right.
After all of this,
Yes.
that's embarrassing.
I would also like to say, I agree with Tom about the abstention. If there is, I was told at one time there was something in state law that said the abstention was a negative vote. Have never seen any proof of that.
Yeah, I don't.
I would ask that Pete show us if that's the case.
Okay.
To me, an abstention would be just a no vote. If we had end up with 3-3, the item gets tabled for further discussion, review, whatever the case may be. Maybe a special meeting has to take place because of the timeliness for whatever item it is, but I would agree that I have an issue with an abstention being a no vote.
I'm curious, does city council have bylaws?
Sorry, I'm not ignoring you. The city council has a code of ethics that they operate under. I'm not sure.
Should they not have bylaws?
Well, that's, sorry, I'm not an
No,
attorney,
yeah, I
and
know,
so
I'm
I
just
don't,
saying.
I know they have a code of ethics because we just went through ethics training. I don't recall if there's also a separate set of bylaws.
It seems like it'd be standard operating procedures.
Another
to have
question for Pete,
bylaws
should there be?
Right, exactly.
So I think, after all of the discussion, these gentlemen are on point, and, since we've been operating under a assumed draft for X number of years, I don't see any reason to have to make a quick approval tonight. I'm, thinking it does warrant some more review, maybe a work session, just so everybody has a chance to look at it and make their comments and discuss. So it's, I think it's a good idea that we spend a little bit more time to make sure that it's right.
Sure, yeah, we can plan for a work session next month.
Yeah.
6 o'clock. Does that work?
Mhm.
On March 12th, I think that's our meeting date. And if it doesn't work, we can find a different time. It's just easy because we're all already planning to be here.
So
I won't be here.
Okay.
No, not for the March meeting.
Will you be available via Zoom? Because I probably won't be at the meeting. I probably have to do Zoom. I'll be laid up.
Okay, we can. You obviously, yes, you have an upcoming procedure that will make it difficult for it to be sooner than March 12th. So we could have it the following week. We could have a special work session the following week if that works.
So is this,
We'll be back until the end of March. I would either like to be on Zoom or something, because I think it's important. Tom, you've made some very good points that I totally agree with. And I think they need to be discussed.
is this meeting recorded, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah, so all the stuff we've pointed out that Tom and John had
Mhm.
pointed out, we can refer to through the recording.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, pulling up my calendar here.
And Crystal, while you're doing that, you and staff are doing a phenomenal job. Please understand that.
Sure, thank you.
I feel that I'm empowered in this role to speak up for the city of Basehor. And that's what I'm doing. And I know you're doing everything and just all the excitement and all the future planning is just phenomenal. And you all are knocking out of the park. There's just going to be some things that I'm going to bring to the body's attention.
That's why we do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. You want to stick to a Tuesday?
And I'm guilty for not having read those as thoroughly as I should have and been more prepared when I got here tonight too. So that's kind of like the consent agenda. If you have a consent agenda, it's on you to read what's in the consent agenda when it's out there before you act on accepting the consent.
I think that's my thing. I did not realize we're kind of approving the bylaws. Where I just assumed they were already there and everything was the same except for the 7 to 6 and the election in June.
And to John's point, these are incredibly similar.
Mhm.
And I can't tell you this is exactly what was struck because I don't have it memorized, but there was not very much that was being proposed to change. In fact, I think the abstention thing is in the other ones. I don't quote me on that because I might be wrong, but as far as putting out a red line copy, that copy I have is an old PDF version that doesn't redline very well, and it says draft all over it. And so communication on my part could have been better.
Oh,
to you all.
but hey,
But
kudos to you for bringing it here tonight.
Absolutely.
so, but yeah, when I mentioned those changes, like those are the changes from those, draft bylaws, but yeah, now we've opened it up and you have questions, and these bylaws are how you govern your meetings. And so you should have input in that and it should make sense to you all. I will go back through and I will listen to this recording and make sure that I make notes and everything. And I will get with Pete and with Maria, who's our city attorney, and we'll try to get these questions answered the best that we can. I suspect that on things such as the abstention and such, Pete is going to be able to point and say, this is where it's at, and this is why it is the way that it's being proposed. But I understand that you want that information, and so we'll get it to you.
Crystal, just for me, I know I have my calendar in front of me, but there might be some things I'm missing. So instead of committing tonight, I would prefer that maybe you send out a couple potential dates and we vote on them.
Okay, I am perfectly happy to do that. I just want to make sure that while we're kind of all in the room, end of March, beginning of April-ish time
Sure.
should work. So you'll be back by the end of March
Yes.
and nobody else. And Tom, I fully understand that things come up. I definitely understand that, but I just want to make sure that there's not anything, nobody has any vacations or anything planned in that kind of 3-week time period between.
The last week of March or the first week in April.
Yeah, so March 26th, April 2nd timeframe. Okay, that's what I'll send out in the morning and see if we can't get some consensus on that. And we'll plan on 6-ish. And like I said, okay,
The city council has a consent agenda, but
correct.
the city council basically in their work session, they discuss the items that are going to be put on the consent agenda. And if there are any disagreements, they don't put it on the consent agenda. But if everybody is pretty much in favor of it, they say, shall we put this on the consent agenda? And kind of, have a voice vote where people, anybody that opposes that says something. I'm not sure how we would work
Sure.
with the consent agenda without discussing. I mean, we would have to be discussing it somehow.
So the city council actually has far more leeway on what can go on the consent agenda than you do, because they have very few things that require public hearings.
Mhm.
Their budget meetings require a public hearing. They cannot put that on the consent agenda. You all are required to have public hearings on things like rezonings, adoption of a future land use map, adoption of a comprehensive plan, special use permits. Those things cannot go on the consent agenda. The only thing that could go on the consent agenda, approval of your minutes. That could go, and again, it can be pulled. Approval of minutes can go on the consent agenda. A subdivision plat that meets all of the zoning regulations can go on the consent agenda. Staff cannot put anything on the agenda that requires any sorts of exceptions. So it could only be, like, even the plat we heard tonight, we could not have put that on the consent agenda because it was a little bit funky. You could put, say we were amending your bylaws and we were doing something really, really similar, simple, like changing the, date, the time, from 7 to 6, and that was the only thing. We could put that on the consent agenda. Staff would put that on the agenda, on the consent agenda for you. And then any of you could, at the beginning of the meeting, if you didn't want it on, say, hey, I want this item to be pulled. Staff can pull it off. In fact, someone from the audience, the public, can also request that it be pulled off. Now, you all have to agree to it. It has to be a vote to pull it off, but that's how it operates. There's very limited scope in what can go on the consent agenda.
So bottom line is we probably won't see much as far as consent agenda.
The only thing that I would ever propose to put on the consent agenda is, remember, was that last month we had Best Estates, that gentleman who was combining the 2 lots into one. There was nothing about it. I mean, it was purely, I hate using the term red tape, but that poor guy got caught up in some red tape. He wanted to put a swimming pool on his property and he found out that he owns 2 lots instead of 1. That should have been on a consent agenda, very easy. And don't get me wrong, it took us 45 seconds to get through that. It's not difficult by any stretch of the imagination, but sometimes you can get 2 or 3 of those types of plats, piled up on each other. And it's easy if it makes sense for you all to just approve them on the consent agenda.
We need to make a motion to table
Yes,
this.
we do.
I'll entertain a motion.
I would make the motion that we table agenda item number 8, PADM-002-24 until our next meeting or till a special meeting.
A second?
Wait, can we?
Yeah.
Do we have to say specifically which meeting?
Well,
Table it?
you don't technically have to say which meeting because this
Okay.
isn't a public hearing item, so you do not have to continue it to a date specific.
Okay,
We can just table it.
I'll rephrase that. I would like to propose that we table agenda item number 8, PADM-002-24.
I'll second.
All in favor, Cecil?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Stacy?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes,
Jim?
Yes.
I vote yes. Table item 8 passes 7-0.
Yep, so, yes, of course, we'll set up a work session and then once we get it all hammered out, then we will bring it back, okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Item 9, open agenda. We have none. Item 10, reports from special committees. We have none. Item 11, development report.
Thank you. We have issued 4 building permits for the year. All of those are single family residential. we expect it to pick up, here before long. It's winter time, obviously. UPS, I think, is finally, just about finished. They're kind of in the final stages of that. I think that's about the only thing. We don't have much. You've seen Dollar Tree. It's up and moving, but that'll be closer to summer before they're ready to go.
Question. A lot of dirt being moved on
Oh, yeah, Steve Miles.
the miles, Tomahawk Valley mile, the southern part of that along, I can't think of what.
Wolf
driveway.
Creek Parkway right along there.
Yeah.
isn't it?
Any idea what's going on?
Nope. I do not know.
You know where Dave Brewer's
Huh?
building used to be now, it's
Yeah.
Kyle Over's mechanic shop.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they're hauling dirt like crazy and right along. Wolf Creek.
Leveling that area.
This is the first I've heard of
And
that.
is that commercial zone? I'd say.
The south, like
Along
that,
the-
that 10 acres between Wolf Creek and State.
Yes.
Yeah, that's commercial.
Yeah, but wasn't it on the
But-
north side, John?
Huh?
Wasn't it on the north side where the piling?
It's
is?
on,
It looked like the north side to me.
it would be on the southwest corner of Tomahawk
Yeah.
Valley property.
I assumed it was to,
Across from Holyfield.
Yeah, because I saw the equipment.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
assumed
they've-
it was
they've-
to
They've
accommodate
dumped
residential
a lot of
housing.
dirt, done a lot of leveling in there, so.
It's been going on for several days now,
No,
tons and tons of.
no, I haven't.
You
been
might
over.
wanna send somebody out or go look or
Yeah, I'll go take a look. Thanks. So no, I don't
Ask-
have an answer for you. right
Probably
now.
don't
ask Steve Miles what's going on.
Yeah, if I was getting ready to.
Sure.
Right, right.
Fire-
No.
Interesting.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Yes, I'll second.
all in favor? Basil?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Janice?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Stacy?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I vote yes. Meeting's adjourned.
You gotta move.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.
On my email to say.
So
No, I didn't see anything.